Do you know the feeling of being only half here? Like almost as if you're watching yourself from outside? There's a weird feeling that you're not really here or that something is missing. And that is probably because of trauma. And trauma not only fragments the mind or the psyche, it actually fragments the soul. And in this video, I'm going to show you the solution to that. It's soul retrieval. And I'm going to show you what soul retrieval really is and why it is the missing piece to your trauma healing. And for me, I had my first soul retrieval about 12 years ago by a shamanic practitioner, and then many throughout the years, and I learned to do it myself. And what I thought was the last big missing piece, what I did 7 months ago, retrieving a 2-year-old part of me due to severe attachment trauma. And only very recently, about a week ago, I retrieved the lost part, which was basically a baby part of me that was never born due to prenatal trauma. And the crazy thing is that I almost started my healing journey with soul retrieval all these many years ago. And then basically it took me another 5 years to understand on a cognitive level that I had trauma. So I was already healing my trauma and the fragmentation of my soul and therefore my psyche also with inner child healing and reparenting and soul retrieval. And I had no idea. I had trauma. So that goes to show that the soul knows before the mind does. And when you approach healing from an intuitive level, from a spiritual level, it can be very helpful for trauma healing. Hi, my name is Christine and I talk about trauma healing and transformation on all levels. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the spiritual level, the soul level. And psychology calls it fragmentation and dissociation, like the fragmentation of the psyche due to trauma and dissociation. And for me, this has never been something separate. For me, it's one and the same thing. Dissociation, fragmentation for me is the loss of parts of your soul, the fragmentation of not only the psyche, but also the soul due to trauma. And I never saw it as a separate thing. And what is also important to know is that it's not a one-time thing, and it's not a quick fix either. I mean, for me, yes, I had lots of trauma and lots of layers and levels to that. And yeah, it's over 12 years ago that I had my first soul retrieval, and it's only a week ago that I retrieved the lost part, the one that was never born due to prenatal trauma. And that is usually, I think, how it goes. It's not a one-time thing. You get all your soul back and and you're healed and everything is great. I mean, also depending on the severity of your trauma and the details of all of that. Usually the first parts can't come back, which is usually, and it was like this in my case, it's an inner child part or several inner child parts. And then it's interwoven with your whole healing journey, with the progress and the process. And it also depends, of course, on your life circumstances and how deep you go into that healing journey. But it's not a quick thing. And usually the oldest, most traumatized parts come back lost. In my case, that was the 2-year-old infant and that baby part that was never born, because I had to create first the safety in my body, in my nervous system. I had to cultivate the environment in which they would feel safe enough to finally come back. And I did that mostly with inner child healing and reparenting work, with developing self-love and self-compassion, And then later on with learning how to regulate my nervous system and doing lots of somatic work and embodiment work, like literally creating safety in the body. And it all goes together. It's not separate. For me, it's all interwoven, and it's important to see it from a more holistic perspective, at least in my opinion. So for my personal story, I was always, ever since I can remember, and especially as a child, I felt very, very ungrounded. I didn't really feel like I'm fully here. I felt like half here. I felt like I'm watching myself from the outside. I used like magical realms and fantasy and all of that to escape into, which was ironically not just a made up escaping mechanism. It was also, I was truly tapping into the higher realms precisely because parts of my soul were still there. It was very natural for me to connect with them. But as I was not fully in my body, or almost not at all, because of all that trauma, there was a huge split. There was a huge disconnect. And again, psychology calls it dissociation. And I had mostly two symptoms, which is depersonalization, which is what I said. You feel detached from yourself, from your body, like you're watching yourself from the outside. And derealization, which is like the world around you feels dreamlike, foggy, somehow not really real. So that's the two that I had. And yeah, it's not just dissociation in my experience. It was the soul fragmentation, the soul parts missing, give you that exact same feeling. So for me, it's one and the same thing. I started that healing journey again about 13, 14 years ago, but I had my first shamanic soul retrieval about 12 years ago. And that was, I think I had no idea back then. I had absolutely no idea about anything. I went there because he was recommended to me by the mother of a friend back in Germany. And I didn't believe in any of these really yet, although I was already 1.5 years into my healing journey. And parts of traumatic memories had started to come up about my father, my mother, lots of stuff that happened in my childhood and in my adolescence. But I didn't really have much clue. And then he did the soul retrieval and he brought 7 or 8 parts back, child and teenage parts, all in different ages. And I didn't really think much of it back then. And then about 7 or 8 months later, I went to Peru and I did plant medicine retreat. I did several ayahuasca ceremonies. And before I go any further, I just want to say I would not recommend to do something like that when you're early in your trauma healing journey, just because it's strong. It's a strong medicine. It's pretty hardcore, and it's your trauma can just surface when you might not be ready for it and you might not have the tools to deal with it. So I would only recommend that if you're really, really called to do that, or you're maybe years into your healing journey and you know how to do this and how to protect yourself and how to hold space and how to just do it properly. Anyway, so in that ceremony, all these parts were suddenly there, and I was like the grown up, and I went on a journey with them, and it was symbolically shown to me like we on a roller coaster ride through a very colorful fantasy land. And I sat with all my inner child parts in that like roller coaster thing, and we were driving through certain core emotions or core scenes, but it wasn't particularly shown what exactly happened. And I think that's important because you can start healing trauma, especially within a child healing, without going too much into the story of my father did this and my mother did that and that happened. There is a time and place for that, but for the true healing, especially also on a soul level, you don't need to go really deep into the story of what happened. So I just took them through these, and I explained them, this was not your fault, and oh, here is shame, okay, that was projected onto you by your parents, and it's not because of you, you did nothing wrong. So intuitively, I was starting to reparent these inner child parts, and that was also the beginning of my inner child healing and reparenting work, which is my number one tool that I would always recommend to everyone starting any kind of healing journey, especially when it comes to healing childhood trauma. This is just so crucial. And yeah, and then as my healing journey proceeded, I mean, years and years, lots of stuff happened, and I was continuing the inner child and the reparenting work. I mean, this is a story for another video, but I went really deep into ancestral healing and into past life healing. And past life, there can also be soul parts split off due to past life trauma. And so I did that like at the same time. I had lots of past life memories surfacing, and I basically brought these parts back by witnessing what happened and by sending, you know, simplified love, compassion, and forgiveness to myself and to others involved. But that's a story for another time. Anyway, like, it took me another, you know, years to understand that, oh, I have trauma, like on a cognitive level, I did not know. And then I still couldn't get to all the deep levels and the earliest soul parts that had split off, because I was at that time with my then partner for almost 10 years. And because I had such a strong attachment and abandonment trauma pre-verbally in the first years of my life, I couldn't get to that part as long as I still was with him, because he basically stepped in as my primary attachment figure. So only then, when the breakup happened almost 2 years ago, which was a whole nother trauma in and of itself, but it took me then another year or so to get to that part, which I didn't even know was there, that when I was 2 years old, I had a strong attachment and abandonment trauma when my primary attachment figure, my mother, was in hospital for 2 weeks, and I cried night after night after night, and no one came, and I thought I was gonna die. There was a huge attachment and abandonment rupture. So I had a regression a few years ago where I saw that. I experienced myself lying in the crib and crying. And only then, only about 7 months ago, due to, you know, whatever happened in my life here, circumstances and people and whatever triggered that, and then that part came up very strongly, and I could finally rescue her, and I could finally integrate that part in me that I thought was the lost one, because over the years I had already cultivated the environment for that pre-verbal part to come back, to feel safe enough to finally come back to me and to be reintegrated. And I did that mostly with embodiment and with somatic work and how to regulate my nervous system. So I would really strongly recommend to not wait 10 years like I did, and start basically with that, or at least early in your journey. Maybe find a good somatic trauma therapist, somatic experiencing, any somatic work, and learning how to regulate your nervous system and how to basically create safety in your body so that these parts feel safe enough to come back. And that was a total game changer for me. And then, yeah, and I thought that was the last one. And then just not even 2 weeks ago, I went to a spa here, and it was beautiful, and it was like dark, warm steam rooms and saunas and pools, you know, dimly lit, and it was all very womb-like. And I whispered to myself, I don't know why, but intuitively, it's safe now to come back. It's safe now to come back. And then I had lots of stuff coming up again about my mother, and about really old rage and all of that. And then I had the strong feeling I have to do a shamanic soul retrieval, which I haven't done in years. I have learned it back then to do it myself. And then I did that, and I found a part of me that was 6-7 months old in the womb that was never born. And that explained a lot of why there was like this invisible rubber band between me and my mother and my old life that reeled me always back in, although I've been traveling for 15 years and living abroad for 15 years now. But that's a whole nother story in of itself. But that was the first part I lost. That's the oldest part, and that's the purest part. I mean, that part doesn't have thoughts. It's just pure instinct, and it's still very much connected to source, to spirit. And only now, after 12 years of doing that work, I have myself back. I'm whole and complete now. So yeah, I just want to mention also that it's not a very chronological linear journey. I think it's quite normal that when you start maybe your first soul retrieval, you will get inner child parts back. And I don't think it's possible to get these, let's say you also had preverbal or prenatal trauma, you would get these very youngest parts of yourself back in the beginning. I think my journey is quite representative for, I'm not claiming it's universally like this, but I think you need to create first the right environment within yourself, self-love, self-compassion through inner child healing and reparenting work, safety in the body through nervous system regulation and somatic work. And then slowly, whatever circumstances, relationships, environments in your life, whatever happens, like this works with it. It's not separate. Like certain relationships, people, situations trigger something in us, and maybe then the next part will be ready to come back to you. And it's not a neat sequence, and it's interwoven with your entire healing journey and with your life. And maybe it's the same for you. Maybe, you have inner child parts coming back and inner teenager parts coming back, but then the next time suddenly have a past life memory that could be triggered by traveling to a certain place where you once lived or meeting a certain person that you spent a past life with. And it's not, it's not really the soul or the subconscious mind doesn't really make a difference. It just, whatever is ready to come up, to be healed and to be reintegrated will show up whenever it wants. Like, for example, I have a friend here who is a trained hypnotherapist, and she's specialized on trauma healing, and finding the root cause of the trauma. And she said it's very, very, very common in her sessions that the client jumps from, usually you go back to childhood, yeah, but sometimes you just go to the womb, sometimes you just go to the past life, the lost past life, or whatever life that the root cause of that trauma is. Like, it's very, very, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal for the soul, for the subconscious mind. That is the one that takes over when you, for example, do a hypno session, or when you do a shamanic journey. It's an altered state of consciousness. So that takes over, and for that consciousness, it's not weird. It's just very, very normal. It's just whatever is ready to show itself will show itself. So, I'm not trying to convince you of believing in whatever you're not ready to believe, or you don't want to, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But I don't think that you would watch my videos if you were, closed to that idea that that there is a soul, and we have, we're multi-dimensional soul that had different experiences as different versions of ourselves in different lifetimes. And that can very much be a root cause of the trauma that you have now. So the sequence matters, but it's not a checklist. And sequencing is that whatever comes up, that's what you deal with. Like, you don't have to look for it. You don't have to analyze it with your mind. You don't have to try to figure it out. whatever is ready to come up now will show itself in whatever circumstance or situation in your life, mirrored back to you, maybe through a difficult relationship. Certain emotions. Like, it is very, very important also to know that when you do a soul retrieval, it's not an immediate positive change. Don't expect to feel whole and complete and super amazing straight away. It's more like the opposite at first. And that's why, because when the original trauma happened, usually something bad happened that was overwhelming to our whatever 2, 3, 5 or 8-year-old self back then. It threatened our survival. It was emotionally overwhelming. It was psychologically overwhelming. So that was split off. You know, it was suppressed. It was pushed away. It was split off. And when the trauma was strong enough or repeated, then that soul part split off with it. But when you get that soul part back, that original overwhelming emotion or pattern will come back too. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden you feel so bad and you're so scared or so anxious or so depressed or you know what, or full of shame or guilt or whatever it is. That is a good sign, because that means that soul part feels safe enough now to feel what it couldn't feel back then. And that's why it's so crucial that you have learned how to reparent yourself, because the worst thing you could do in that moment is you tell that part of you to fuck off again, like what are you doing, like, you know, and you suppress that emotion again, you suppress the whole thing again, or even worse, you shame and judge and criticize yourself for it. Like, always remember, there is that very young part of you that was once so alone and so scared and so left alone with something he or she couldn't deal with, that now you have to step in as the adult and moreover as the loving parent of your own inner child. You have to step in and tell that inner child that it's safe now to feel that, and that you feel it with him or her. And like, you need to have learned how to hold space for feeling that safely together with that scared inner child. Yeah, and that's why it's so important to do all that, like to practice inner child healing, reparenting work, to also know how to regulate your nervous system, make yourself feel safe in the body, make that part feel safe in the body when it comes back. Emotional healing, emotional awareness, like, don't push your emotions away, like, witness them, feel them, acknowledge them together with that traumatized inner child part, for example, and then it can safely be released and that part can be safely integrated. And for integration work, it's also very important that you're very much in your body. That's why I keep talking about embodiment and somatic work. Work together with your body, not against it, because the whole point of soul retrieval and getting these exiled parts back is that they finally are embodied. They are not anymore floating around and outside of you. They are very much in the body again, and you embody them. So anything involving the body, any kind of body work, somatic work, and just like go in nature, like go for walks, go swimming, put your feet on the soil, you know, touch trees, whatever, like just do any kind of, you know, dancing, singing, I don't know, like anything that involves the body and body expression. There is like body work like yoga and qigong and tai chi and martial arts, or any kind of dancing, ecstatic dance, like anything like that will help you to be more in your body, and it will help you to release these energies also through your body. And it will help these parts that want to come back to be safely integrated and feel at home in your body. And it's so crucial to develop self-love and self-compassion. And for that, again, inner child healing and reparenting work is, in my experience, the best tool, because you develop so much self-love and compassion for yourself when you start to work with these scared little inner child parts, and when you learn how to feel these emotions that you once couldn't feel, and when you learn how to open your heart towards yourself and these scared parts of you, and to feel these emotions again. And if you can't do that, these parts won't come back. They won't be integrated properly because they just don't feel safe with you, like they didn't feel safe back then. In the environment you lived in, maybe with your parents or whatever it was. So you need to become your own loving parent. You need to learn how to really love yourself and to hold space for yourself and to make yourself and these inner child parts feel safe enough to come back to you and to feel whatever needs to be felt. It's so crucial, without judging yourself for it. And it's also nothing that is separate from your life. It's not like you do one workshop or one class or one meditation where you're like, yeah, my inner child, yeah, I love you, you're safe with me, la la la, and then next time something happens in your life, you suppress it again, you judge yourself again, you're like, oh, you're so stupid, why did I do this again? And you're just like, inner critic wins again, and the negative voice inside you wins again. So no, just really choose right now to open your heart towards yourself and your inner child, and choose lots of self-compassion and forgiveness for yourself, forgiveness for what you did or didn't do. Because, you were doing the best you could at any given moment, and you were just too little, too young. You didn't know how to handle these things. It's very normal. We all did that. You just did the best you could with the tools you had. Even later on as a grown-up, maybe you made some mistakes, or you made some mistakes in your life, or with your own children, or with your partners or friends or whatever. But it's just the best you could do with the tools you had. And the more love and compassion and forgiveness you have for yourself and for your inner child, the more love and compassion you will have for other people. But first, it comes first that you develop that love and compassion and forgiveness for yourself, not the other way around. For others, it just comes automatically the more you learn how to love yourself. So if things take their time and you think you're doing something wrong, then just really try to be not only compassionate with yourself and your healing process, but patient, because it's not neat, it's not linear. Things just take their time. It's interwoven with your actual life, wherever you are, whatever you do, whatever happens in your life. And just also trust that your soul shows you exactly what it needs and what is ready to come back to you at whatever given time. Years and years into this work, all of a sudden there's more soul parts to come up, like for me, where I thought I'm already done and oh my God, what is that now? But that's how it is. Like, it's not a failure. It's just the nature of a messy healing journey. It can take time. It's not linear. It happens in spirals. It circles back to something that you thought you already dealt with years ago, but now it's just a deeper layer is ready to come up. That's totally okay. And it's not separate. Inner child healing, reparenting, soul retrieval, somatic healing and embodiment, and nervous system regulation, it's just all part of the same thing. That's why I would strongly recommend you to do all of them, because again, we are a soul and a mind and emotions and a body. We are not either or. They all are interconnected. They all work together. That's why I like to talk about healing on a holistic level and very much on the spiritual level, because again, my story proves that For many, many years, I did trauma healing without knowing I had trauma on the spiritual level, which already worked, which already brought back so many missing parts of me, and I didn't even know. So, but just focusing on just the spiritual or just the mind or just the body, that is, yeah, that's not great either. That will definitely leave it incomplete. So try to see it on a more holistic level. So my recommendation is, if you're ready for it, go and get a soul retrieval from experienced and good and hopefully recommended shamanic practitioner or whatever healer is out there that you know or that is recommended to you that can do that kind of work. There are also some people out there who do that kind of work who probably shouldn't be doing it. So I would really recommend you to do your research, listen to your intuition, and ask people that you trust if they know someone. And be patient with yourself in the process. And then getting these parts back, they will actually integrate much better and much easier. It makes the integration stick when you create the right environment within yourself. So the invitation is to look deep within yourself and ask your soul, now, what is ready to come home? Is there a part in me that was once split off and exiled and now is ready to come back home? And are you ready to be a safe home, a safe space for these parts that want to come back to you, so that you can finally have, you can be whole and complete within yourself. You don't need other people anymore to complete you. You don't need to chase or pursue others or things or distractions. You don't need to numb out anymore to avoid the pain. It's all ready to come back to you when you say that you're ready, when you feel that you're ready. And you have all these tools. And if you're watching this video, you are strong enough. I can tell you that you are strong enough, you have the power to do that work. And I see you and I believe in you. And when I have done it without knowing anything and I had no clue and I was dragged onto that path kicking and screaming, then you can do it 10 times better and faster. I can tell you that. And I wish you so much strength and love and support on your healing journey, and many blessings, and have a great day. Bye bye.